Tony D and Little Joan with a Screenwriter's Rant on the Line, movie that takes place during the switchboard operator days. For those of you who don't know, these are old-timey phone things. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books, links in the description. Comedy Horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys, books 1 through 11, available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. So what you see here is a switchboard where they had to like manually pull the plug and stick it in a hole in order to connect people. So this takes place, I'm going to guess, most of the stuff went out of vogue, like, I'm going to say around the 80s. Not that it was in vogue, that was the technology. Because you got dial-up stuff. So this might be like anywhere from the 40s to the 50s, 60s, 70s maybe. She's English, so it takes place in the UK. It's definitely post-war, I'll say. So I'm going to guess probably the 50s, the way she's dressed maybe. Maybe early 60s. Something like that. And it's one of these movies, I call them phone movies, where the phone's very important. And either they're in a phone booth or they're trapped somewhere. There was a recent one, too. I think Bruce Willis was in it. And, it all has to do with these calls and the phone. Stay on the line. Like now, the technology will trace you just about anywhere. Here, you would need to be in this room probably to trace someone with this technology, because they could actually see where you were calling from. These days they just do it all digitally. Back then it would have been tough. So her boss is telling her, don't get involved. Let the police handle it. I assume it takes place in the past. I mean, looking at the technology, it looks very old. Directed by Oliver Pern. And so what she's tracking, by the way, is there's some woman in trouble. And she is talking to her on the phone and trying to track her because she keeps saying stuff like, he's coming, he's going to kill me, or whatever. So, yeah, it's kind of like a phone movie. So it's going to be, I assume it's a very low-budget deal, and that's why they shot it this way. And it's going to be a lot of voice acting. It's kind of interesting. It's like a movie on a slightly different level. It's like half radio, half movie. So first act, she's the switchboard operator, and she does her thing, and she gets a weird call from somebody claiming to be in trouble, but she has no way of verifying it, and she hangs up or whatever, and she doesn't know what's going on. And she talks to her friend, and again, this is all in the room. And her friend's like, well, was it a prank? Was it real? And she's like, I don't know. And then eventually she calls back and kind of confirms it. Or she calls the police. And at first the police are like, don't worry about it. Who knows what it was. Or we'll look into it. And they really don't. Then in the second act, she confirms that it's a real person somehow. And she gets details as she desperately sort of tells her something and then hangs up the phone and hides. Or hangs up the phone and then pretends to be, I don't know, the wife or the girlfriend or whoever she is. So slowly through the course of the second act, we get more and more information on the girl. And of course, the police don't want to help, or they don't have the technology, or they try to help, but they, maybe there's a false lead. They go to the wrong house. It turns out no one's there, and they're annoyed at her. It's always that kind of thing. So you orchestrate the thing so nobody believes her. And then her boss is like, well, let the police handle it. But the police clearly aren't handling it. Or they come to the door and they talk to the husband, the abusive husband, who gives them a story and they believe it because they don't want to be bothered. So then the second act is a harrowing experience of how she helps her. But then there's a moment where she tells the woman to kill the guy or hit him really hard. So it could go in a weird direction towards the end. Like, she could essentially help commit a murder. And then the reveal could be, oh no, she was crazy. You should have never told her to do that. She killed her doctor or her brother or whoever was trying to help her, and now she's on the run, and whatever. Typically in these movies, it ends with the third act, the killer comes to where she is, which is possible too, right? Maybe the other woman gets away, and then the killer or the potential killer figures out what's happening and then comes to her to get revenge on her for telling his wife to escape. And then there's a scene where she's running through the switchboard place, and then fortunately somebody shows up to save her, and it's because of the woman that she saved, right? So she saves the woman who saved her by getting the cops and saying, "Oh, I'm the woman that I was calling and calling, and you people didn't do anything." The cops finally believe it, and then they show up at the switchboard place and save her. So that to me would be probably the best way to end it. I mean, you could do a big twist where it turns out, yeah, you basically helped a murderer, and now you're going to jail, or you helped a murderer and like you're just gonna have to live with it. That would be like a horror movie. It's they bill it as a thriller, so I'm gonna lean towards my first instinct that she saves the woman and then the woman saves her. That's probably a good way to do it. Oh, here it is, some information. Alderney, UK, 1964. Agnes, 24, works alone as a switchboard operator in a telephone exchange. So 1964. That's about where it is. While going about her daily business connecting people, she passes the time listening to their conversations. This complex mosaic of voices rises to a single scream. So that'll be interesting too. She'll hear people's... She shouldn't, but she does. They all did back in the day. And you would have these things where calls would bleed into one another. I was just old enough to sort of catch the tail end of that in the early 70s when I'd pick up the phone and I'd hear people. I don't know if they were operating on switchboards by the time I was like 4 or 5, picking up the phone and listening at it, but I was there for the dial, the rotary phones. But by the late 70s, we're switching to the buttons, and things were moving at a pace. So it looks okay. I mean, it's going to be a low budget thing. Oliver Pern directed. Doesn't say who wrote it. I'm going to assume he probably wrote it too. The cast is Dame Harriet Walter. I assume that's her, maybe. Royce Pearson. I assume that's the killer. And Victoria Lucy. I assume that's either her friend or the woman that she saves. Possibly both, if they're doing voices. I don't know. So, would I see this? I might, Rabbit. I might. I mean, it doesn't look bad. It should definitely be a tight 90. You definitely don't want this thing to go 2.5 hours because you're stuck in this room. It's very claustrophobic just looking at it, right? But for a low budget thriller, yeah, this could be good. I'd probably say it. I don't know if I'd go to the theater for it. It's probably not going to get a theater release. Probably be on VOD at some point. Yeah, I'd say it. I mean, I think it looks decent. From what I see. I mean, it's only a 1.5-minute trailer, but it looks decent. Looks shot well. You can do you could do this period piece because you found this room and an operating switchboard, right? So as long as they never leave that room, it's 1964, baby. You just have to give her the right clothes and you're good to go. So, yeah, I think it'll be decent. Decent low budget thriller that you can watch and say, oh, that was all right. So that's it for me, Tony D and Little Joan. Check us out on Odysee, Bitchute, and Rumble for our more based takes. Thank you all for supporting the channel. I'm over 3,000 subscribers officially. Officially over 3,000 subscribers, so thank you for that. The live stream went fantastic on Sunday. Had a great time. Next live stream is next Sunday at 7 because I don't have any conflicts. I may be doing a prototype live stream like on Thursday if I get my act together, so I have enough time to sit down and try to do a Rumble YouTube live stream prototype that I could do for Sunday. So maybe sort of tune in for that if you're around. But otherwise, we'll see you in the next one.